Here's something nobody tells you about buying trucks. The ones everyone hates today might make you rich tomorrow. That beat-up pickup rusting in your neighbor's driveway could be worth more than a brand new Tesla. What if I told you there are trucks that went from being the laughingstock of dealership lots to selling for six figures at auctions? Trucks that mechanics refuse to work on, that car reviewers called disasters, that sat unsold for months, now commanding prices that would make your bank account weep tears of joy. Today, I'm counting down 10 trucks that nobody wanted, until suddenly everyone did. Before we dive into these automotive time bombs turned gold mines, here's a crazy stat. Only 1.5% of you watching this are actually subscribed to the channel. That's wild considering how much research goes into these videos. Hitting that subscribe button really helps me get monetized and keep bringing you content like this. Plus, you'll be the first to know when the next truck market explosion happens. The truck market is absolutely insane right now, but not in the way you think. Sure, new pickup prices are through the roof, but the real money is in the forgotten ones. The trucks that dealerships couldn't give away 20 years ago are now selling for more than luxury cars. This isn't just about classic truck appreciation. This is about understanding why certain vehicles go from zero to hero seemingly overnight. Number 10. The 1982 to 1988 Chevrolet S-10. Back in the early 80s, the S-10 was Chevy's answer to the compact truck craze. Problem was, nobody really wanted Chevy's answer. These little trucks were underpowered, cheaply built, and had more rattles than a baby's toy collection. The base four-cylinder engine made just 82 horsepower. That's barely enough to pull itself up a steep driveway, let alone haul anything meaningful. Car reviewers absolutely destroyed the S-10. Motor Trend called it aggressively mediocre and noted that the interior felt like it was assembled by someone wearing boxing gloves. The plastic dashboard cracked if you looked at it wrong, and the paint job was so thin you could see the primer underneath after a few winters. But here's where it gets interesting. The S-10 had terrible initial sales because it was competing against the Toyota pickup and Nissan's offerings, which were simply better trucks in every measurable way. Chevy dealers couldn't move them off the lots, and used car dealers wouldn't even take them in trade. By the late 90s, most S-10s had either rusted away or been scrapped after major mechanical failures. Fast forward to today, and clean S-10s are selling for $20,000 to $30,000. What happened? Scarcity played a huge role. So few survived that finding one in good condition became like finding buried treasure. But the real catalyst was the lowrider and mini truck scene. These trucks became the perfect canvas for custom builds, with their lightweight frames and simple mechanics making them ideal for modifications. The turning point came around 2015 when social media started showcasing incredible S-10 builds. Young enthusiasts who couldn't afford classic muscle cars discovered they could buy an S-10 for cheap and create something truly unique. The demand exploded, and suddenly everyone wanted one of these disposable trucks. Number 9. The 1987 to 1996 Ford F-150 regular cab short bed. This might sound crazy because F-150s have always been popular, right? Wrong. The specific configuration of regular cab short bed F-150s from this era was actually the unwanted stepchild of the Ford truck family. Everyone wanted crew cabs or long beds for practical reasons, leaving the regular cab short beds sitting on dealer lots like unwanted puppies. The problem was simple. These trucks weren't practical for families or serious work. The regular cab meant cramped seating for more than 2 people, and the short bed couldn't carry much cargo. Fleet buyers ignored them. Families chose crew cabs, and contractors needed long beds. Ford dealers often used them as loss leaders just to move inventory. What made things worse was the engine lineup. The base 4.9-liter straight-six was reliable but painfully slow, while the 5.0-liter V8 was available but expensive. Most buyers went with a compromised 5.8-liter V8, which had decent power but terrible fuel economy. By the time these trucks were 10 years old, they were worth almost nothing in the used market. The transformation began in the late 2000s when the sport truck scene exploded. These regular cab short beds turned out to be perfect for performance modifications. Their shorter wheelbase made them lighter and more responsive, while the single cab design kept weight down. Suddenly, what was once a liability became a massive advantage. Lightning tribute builds became incredibly popular, with enthusiasts stuffing supercharged 5.0S and modern LS engines into these forgotten trucks. Clean examples started commanding serious money, especially ones with the 5.0 V8 and manual transmission. Today, a pristine 1993 F-150 regular cab short bed with low miles can sell for $40,000 or more. That's more than many brand new trucks cost just a few years ago. Number 8. The 1991 to 1994 Ford Explorer Sport. Wait, the Explorer Sport? That's not even a truck. Well, technically it is. Ford built it on the Ranger platform and marketed it as a sport utility truck. But nobody cared about technicalities when it first came out because the Explorer Sport was solving a problem nobody had. The regular Explorer was already selling like crazy, giving families the SUV experience they wanted. The Sport, with its 2 doors and sport-tuned suspension, seemed pointless. Why would you buy a less practical Explorer that costs more money? The marketing department clearly hadn't thought this through, and sales reflected the confusion. The Sport had other issues too. The Sport suspension made it uncomfortable for daily driving. The 2-door configuration was impractical for most buyers, and the interior was basically identical to the regular Explorer despite the higher price. Ford dealers struggled to explain why anyone should choose the Sport over the standard model, and most customers didn't bother trying to understand. By the late 90s, used Explorer Sports were selling for thousands less than regular Explorers with similar mileage. They depreciated faster than almost any other Ford product, and many ended up in junkyards after relatively minor accidents because repair costs exceeded their value. The comeback story started with the off-road community. As overlanding and adventure travel became popular in the 2010s, enthusiasts discovered that the Explorer Sport's shorter wheelbase and sport suspension made it incredibly capable off-road. The 2-door design that once seemed impractical became perfect for tight trail situations. Social media played a huge role in the transformation. Instagram accounts dedicated to adventure builds started featuring heavily modified Explorer Sports tackling serious terrain. The truck developed a cult following among outdoor enthusiasts who appreciated its unique combination of capability and character. Today, clean Explorer Sports with manual transmissions are selling for $15,000 to $25,000, and pristine examples command even more. The irony is thick. A truck that nobody wanted because it wasn't practical enough became valuable precisely because it wasn't like everything else. Number 7. The 1998 to 2001 Chevrolet S-10 ZR2. The ZR2 was Chevy's attempt to create a Baja-ready compact truck straight from the factory. It had wider fender flares, Bill Stein shocks, skid plates, and aggressive tires. On paper, it sounded amazing. In reality, it was a commercial disaster that showcased everything wrong with late 90s automotive marketing. The problem wasn't the truck itself. The ZR2 was actually quite capable off-road. The problem was the price. Chevy positioned it as a premium product, charging nearly $30,000 for what was essentially a dressed-up S-10. For that money, buyers could get a full-size truck with more power, more space, and better reliability. The ZR2 also suffered from identity confusion. It looked tough but wasn't powerful enough to back up its appearance. The 4.3-liter V6 made decent torque but felt sluggish, especially with the automatic transmission that most buyers chose. The truck couldn't decide if it wanted to be a serious off-roader or a lifestyle accessory, and it failed at both. Reviews were mixed at best. Four-Wheeler magazine praised its off-road capability, but criticized the interior quality and on-road manners. Road and Track called it a solution looking for a problem, and noted that most buyers would be better served by a regular S-10 or a full-size truck. Sales were predictably poor. Chevy dealers couldn't explain why someone should spend ZR2 money on an S-10 platform, and most customers agreed. By 2001, Chevy had quietly discontinued the ZR2, marking it as one of their least successful specialty vehicles. The resurrection began around 2018 when the overlanding trend exploded. Enthusiasts looking for smaller, more maneuverable adventure vehicles discovered that the ZR2 was essentially a factory pre-runner that had been ahead of its time. The wide stance, upgraded suspension, and aggressive styling that once seemed excessive suddenly looked perfect for modern adventure builds. The truck's rarity worked in its favor too. Because so few were sold originally, finding one in good condition became a genuine challenge. Clean ZR2s started commanding prices that seemed insane for what was once considered a failed experiment. Today, pristine ZR2s with manual transmissions are selling for $30,000 to $40,000, more than they cost when new. The automotive press that once dismissed them now calls them underappreciated classics and the perfect adventure truck. It's a complete reversal that would have seemed impossible 20 years ago. Number 6. The 1983 to 1988 Ford Ranger. The original Ranger was Ford's response to the success of small imported trucks, but it launched into a market that wasn't quite ready for American compact trucks. While Toyota and Nissan had spent years perfecting their small pickup formulas, Ford was essentially starting from scratch with the Ranger platform. Early Rangers had significant quality issues that hurt their reputation almost immediately. The 2.0-liter four-cylinder engine was underpowered and unreliable, frequently suffering from head gasket failures and overheating problems. The 2.3-liter upgrade wasn't much better, and both engines felt completely inadequate for truck duty. The interior was another disaster. Ford used the cheapest possible materials, and it showed. The dashboard cracked, the door panels warped, and the seats wore out faster than cheap sneakers. Consumer Reports consistently rated early Rangers below average for reliability, and J.D. Power surveys showed customer satisfaction scores in the basement. What made things worse was the competition. The Toyota pickup, later Tacoma, was simply better in every way, more reliable, better built, and more capable. Nissan's trucks weren't perfect, but they were still superior to the Ranger in most categories. Ford's compact truck looked and felt like a rushed response to market pressure rather than a carefully developed product. By the early 90s, used Rangers were selling for significantly less than comparable Japanese trucks with similar mileage. Their reputation for poor reliability made them hard to sell, and most ended up as work trucks for landscaping companies and contractors who needed cheap transportation rather than dependable service. The transformation began with the drift scene in the early 2000s. Enthusiasts discovered that Rangers were perfect for budget builds because they were rear-wheel drive, lightweight, and incredibly cheap to buy. The weak engines that once seemed like liabilities became advantages when swapping in more powerful alternatives. Engine swaps became the Ranger's salvation. The lightweight chassis could handle serious power, and the simple construction made modifications relatively straightforward. Popular swaps included Ford's 302 V8, Chevy LS engines, and even turbocharged four-cylinders from sport compact cars. The truck's reputation completely flipped once social media showcased what was possible. Drift Rangers with 400-plus horsepower builds started appearing at events across the country, and the automotive press began recognizing the platform's potential. What was once seen as Ford's biggest compact truck mistake became the foundation for some of the most creative builds in the enthusiast community. Today, clean first-generation Rangers with manual transmissions command $15,000 to $25,000, with particularly nice examples selling for even more. The irony is incredible. Trucks that nobody wanted because they were poorly built became valuable because they were perfect foundations for custom builds. Number 5. The 1992 to 1996 Ford Bronco. The final generation Bronco should have been Ford's masterpiece, a culmination of 30 years of SUV development wrapped in a package that balanced capability with comfort. Instead, it became one of Ford's most controversial vehicles, and not for reasons anyone expected. The O.J. Simpson chase changed everything. On June 17, 1994, millions of people watched a white Ford Bronco slowly traveling down Interstate 405, and the image became seared into American consciousness. Overnight, the Bronco went from being Ford's flagship SUV to being associated with one of the most notorious criminal cases in history. Sales plummeted immediately. Dealers reported that customers who had been interested in Broncos suddenly changed their minds, often citing the negative association with the chase. Ford's marketing department tried various approaches to distance the brand from the controversy, but nothing worked. The damage was done, and the Broncos' reputation never recovered. The situation was made worse by changing market preferences. By the mid-90s, buyers were shifting toward more refined SUVs like the Jeep Grand Cherokee and upcoming luxury options from European brands. The Bronco felt outdated, with its truck-based construction and agricultural ride quality seeming primitive compared to newer alternatives. Ford recognized the writing on the wall and discontinued the Bronco after 1996, ending a nameplate that had once been synonymous with American outdoor adventure. For the next 20-plus years, Broncos were just used SUVs with a complicated history. Nothing special, nothing valuable, just transportation for people who needed something cheap and capable. The resurrection began around 2015 when Ford announced they were bringing back the Bronco name. Suddenly, automotive journalists and enthusiasts started looking back at the final generation with fresh eyes. Articles appeared celebrating the Bronco's capability, its honest construction, and its connection to American automotive history. The OJ association that had once killed sales became a bizarre selling point for some collectors. The exact model and color from the chase developed its own strange cult following, with people specifically seeking out white 1993 to 1994 Broncos. It was morbid fascination, but it drove demand nonetheless. More importantly, the overlanding and adventure travel communities discovered that final-generation Broncos were incredibly capable platforms for serious off-road builds. The solid axles, robust construction, and available manual transmission made them perfect for expedition-style modifications. Today, clean Broncos with manual transmissions are selling for $30,000 to $50,000, with exceptionally nice examples commanding even more. The controversial history that once made them unsellable now makes them interesting, and their capability has been rediscovered by a new generation of enthusiasts. Number 4. The 1987 to 1991 Ford F-257.3L IDI diesel. The 7.3-liter IDI diesel was Ford's first attempt at offering a serious diesel option in their full-size trucks, but it launched with problems that made early adopters wish they'd stuck with gas engines. The IDI system was indirect injection, which sounds technical but basically meant it was slow, loud, and smoky compared to what people expected from diesel power. The engine made reasonable torque, around 185 lb-ft, but horsepower was pathetic at just 90 horses in early versions. For comparison, the gasoline 5.8-liter V8 made 210 horsepower, making the diesel feel like it was powered by hamsters. The indirect injection system also made the engine incredibly loud, with a distinctive clatter that could be heard from blocks away. Reliability was another major issue. The IDI diesel had problems with fuel system components, glow plug failures, and injection pump issues that left owners stranded and frustrated. Ford dealers often didn't know how to properly service the diesel systems, leading to expensive misdiagnoses and repeated failures. The combination of poor performance and questionable reliability made these trucks hard to sell when new. Fleet buyers mostly avoided them, preferring the proven gasoline engines, while individual customers were scared off by horror stories from early adopters. By the mid-90s, used 7.3 IDI trucks were selling for significantly less than comparable gas models. What changed everything was the modern diesel performance scene. As enthusiasts learned more about diesel tuning and modification, they discovered that the 7.3 IDI was actually a very robust engine that could handle significant power increases with proper modifications. The indirect injection system that once seemed like a liability became an advantage for serious modifications. IDI engines could handle more aggressive tuning than their direct injection successors, and the robust construction could support power levels that would destroy lighter modern engines. Turbo conversions became incredibly popular, transforming sluggish IDI trucks into serious performers. With proper turbocharging and fueling modifications, the 7.3 IDI could produce 300-plus horsepower and massive torque figures that made them competitive with modern diesels. The agricultural and work truck communities also rediscovered these engine's virtues. The simple mechanical systems were easier to maintain and repair than modern computerized diesels, making them attractive for operations that needed reliable power without electronic complexity. Today, clean 7.3 IDI trucks are commanding serious money, especially crew cab models with manual transmissions. What was once Ford's diesel mistake is now considered the foundation of their diesel legacy, and prices reflect that newfound respect. Number 3. The 1980 to 1986 Ford F-154.9L Straight Six. The 4.9-liter Straight Six was Ford's economy engine option during an era when fuel economy mattered more than performance, but it ended up being the wrong engine at the wrong time. While other manufacturers were developing more efficient V6 engines, Ford stuck with an ancient inline design that traced its roots back to the 1960s. The 4.9 made adequate torque, around 265 lb-ft, but horsepower was dismal at just 150 horses. In an era when even compact cars were making similar power, having a full-size truck that accelerated like a loaded semi seemed ridiculous. The engine was also incredibly heavy, adding unnecessary weight to trucks that were already struggling with fuel economy. Buyers avoided the 4.9 whenever possible, preferring to upgrade to V8 power even if it meant worse fuel economy. The Straight Six was seen as the cheap option, something you got when you couldn't afford a real truck engine. Dealers often had to discount 4.9 equipped trucks just to move them off the lot. The situation was made worse by the engine's agricultural character. The 4.9 sounded like a tractor, vibrated like a paint mixer, and had all the refinement of a farm implement. For buyers who wanted their trucks to feel modern and sophisticated, the Straight Six was exactly the wrong choice. By the late 80s, Ford had largely phased out the 4.9 in favor of more modern V6 and V8 options. Used trucks with the Straight Six became the cheapest options in the marketplace, attracting only buyers who needed basic transportation and couldn't afford anything better. The resurrection began with the work truck community. As modern trucks became more complex and expensive to maintain, contractors and fleet operators rediscovered the virtues of simple, reliable powertrains. The 4.9 Straight Six turned out to be incredibly durable, with many engines running hundreds of thousands of miles with minimal maintenance. The engine's torque characteristics, once seen as a liability, became recognized as perfect for work applications. The flat torque curve meant consistent power delivery, and the engine's ability to lug at low RPM made it ideal for towing and hauling applications. Enthusiasts also discovered the 4.9's modification potential. The robust construction could handle significant power increases, and the simple design made modifications relatively straightforward. Turbo conversions became popular, transforming sluggish work trucks into surprisingly capable performers. Today, clean F-150s with 4.9 engines and manual transmissions are selling for $20,000 to $30,000. The engine that nobody wanted because it wasn't powerful enough is now valued precisely because it's simple, reliable, and honest, qualities that seem increasingly rare in the modern truck market. Number 2. The 1973 to 1987 Chevrolet C10/C20 square body. The square body Chevy trucks should have been classics from day one, but they launched into the worst possible market conditions and developed a reputation that took decades to overcome. The 1973 oil crisis hit just as these trucks were reaching showrooms, making their thirsty V8 engines seem irresponsible and outdated. The timing couldn't have been worse. Gas prices skyrocketed, economy cars became fashionable, and buying a full-size truck seemed like a statement of environmental ignorance. Chevrolet dealers watched as customers who had been interested in new trucks suddenly started looking at compact cars and imported vehicles. The square body design, which now looks clean and purposeful, was criticized at launch for being too plain and industrial. Automotive journalists called them appliances on wheels and complained about the lack of styling flair compared to competitors. The simple, functional design seemed boring in an era when buyers wanted more excitement from their vehicles. Quality control was another major issue. Early square-body trucks had problems with rust, electrical systems, and interior components. The infamous Chevy shake became a running joke among truck buyers, referring to the vibration and rattles that seemed inherent to the platform. By the early 80s, used square-body trucks were among the cheapest vehicles in the marketplace. Their reputation for poor build quality and excessive fuel consumption made them hard to sell, and most ended up as work trucks for contractors who needed cheap, disposable transportation. The transformation began in the late 90s when the custom truck scene rediscovered the square body's potential. The clean lines that once seemed boring became perfect for modern modifications, and the simple construction made custom work relatively straightforward. The LS engine swap revolution played a huge role in the square body's comeback. Modern LS engines dropped into these trucks almost perfectly, transforming sluggish work trucks into serious performers. The combination of classic styling and modern power created something completely new and exciting. Social media accelerated the trend exponentially. Instagram and YouTube channels dedicated to square body builds started showcasing incredible transformations, from subtle resto mods to full custom creations. The trucks that had once been automotive punchlines became the stars of the custom scene. The market responded dramatically. Clean square body trucks started commanding serious money, especially short bed models with V8 engines and manual transmissions. What had once been the cheapest trucks in the used car market became some of the most sought-after classics in the hobby. Today, pristine square body trucks are selling for $50,000 to $75,000, with exceptional examples commanding even more. The transformation is complete. Trucks that nobody wanted because they seemed too plain and unreliable are now valued precisely because they're simple, honest, and perfect foundations for custom builds. Number 1. The 1978 to 1979 Ford F-154x4. The number 1 spot goes to a truck that was actually ahead of its time, but failed commercially because the market wasn't ready for what Ford was offering. The 1978 to 1979 F-154x4 was Ford's first attempt at a mainstream four-wheel drive pickup, but it launched with problems that made early buyers regret their purchase decisions. The truck used a complex transfer case system that was prone to failure, especially when operated by owners who didn't understand four-wheel drive systems. The front axle was sourced from Dana but wasn't properly integrated with Ford's suspension design, leading to handling problems and premature wear issues. More importantly, the truck was expensive, really expensive. Four-wheel drive added almost 30% to the base price of an F-150, putting it into luxury car territory. Most buyers couldn't justify the cost for what seemed like a specialty feature they might never use. The fuel crisis made things worse. The 4x4 system added weight and complexity that hurt fuel economy significantly, making these trucks seem irresponsible during an era of gas rationing and economic uncertainty. Sales were disastrous, and Ford seriously considered dropping four-wheel drive from their truck lineup entirely. By 1980, used examples were selling for thousands less than comparable two-wheel drive trucks with similar mileage. The 4x4 system that had added so much to the original price became seen as a liability that made the trucks more expensive to maintain and repair. The resurrection story is incredible. As outdoor recreation became popular in the 80s and 90s, four-wheel drive went from being a specialty feature to an essential requirement. The trucks that had once seemed overpriced and overcomplicated suddenly looked prescient and advanced. The early adoption of four-wheel drive technology that had once been a liability became a huge advantage. These trucks were among the first mainstream 4x4s, making them historically significant in ways nobody had anticipated. Collectors and enthusiasts began recognizing them as important milestones in pickup truck development. The build quality issues that had plagued early examples were largely resolved through decades of use and modification. Enthusiasts learned how to address the transfer case problems and front axle issues, turning problematic trucks into reliable performers. Today, clean 1978 to 1979 F-154x4s with manual transmissions are selling for $40,000 to $60,000, with exceptionally nice examples commanding even more. The trucks that nearly killed Ford's four-wheel drive program are now celebrated as pioneers that established the template for modern pickup trucks. The pattern is clear across all these trucks: vehicles that were misunderstood, poorly timed, or ahead of their market suddenly became valuable when circumstances changed. Scarcity played a role, but the real catalyst was always cultural shifts that made formerly undesirable characteristics suddenly appealing. The lesson for anyone looking to spot the next big value explosion is simple: look for trucks that are currently unpopular for reasons that might not matter in 20 years. The diesel trucks nobody wants because they're not as refined as modern alternatives, the manual transmission models that seem outdated, the simple designs that lack modern features. These might be tomorrow's six-figure classics. The truck market moves in cycles, and understanding those cycles is the key to identifying future value explosions before they happen. Don't miss the next video where I reveal which current trucks are set up for the same dramatic value increases.